So let me briefly introduce Natasha, and I'll take just a minute or two. Natasha, as you can see, she is from Toronto right now. Right now she's in Toronto, in the University of Toronto. But earlier she has been teaching in St. Stephen's. And you know about the Stephanians, don't you? We have, among the Stephanians, we have the very famous Shashi Tharoor, who is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we have so many other luminaries who come from St. Stephen's. So Natasha has studied in St. Stephen's, and she has also taught in St. Stephen's. And unlike some who are snooty, who are snobbish about being Stephanians, Natasha is very grounded. She's very down to earth, as you will discover in a little while. So Natasha was, she was in India, in Chandigarh also. She was a research scholar, and she was on a fellowship here in Punjab University. And then she went places. She went back to St. Stephen's as a teacher. And wherever she went, well, people were very happy with whatever she was doing with her as a student and also as a teacher. And well, we were told, because we were faculty of the department, we were told by the local colleges, whenever they needed somebody, whenever they needed a faculty member, they said, please, hame Natasha jaisi koi aur ladki dilwa do. And I would tell them, where do you get another Natasha? So anyway, we are very happy, Natasha, that you could join us today. Over to you, Natasha.
First of all, Professor Jaitka, of course, I always very fondly refer to Professor Jaitka as ma'am.
Can you be louder, Natasha, please?
Yeah. Am I more audible now? Is it better?
Yes.
Yes. So, of course, thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's always a pleasure to be able to do anything that you organize, because you've always been so efficient and such a source of inspiration. And I can say that for sure to all of you, the students sitting here, that your relationship with Professor Jaitka, professional and personal, will leave you enriched, and you will realize that as the years go by. So thank you so much for inviting me for this. Okay, so what we are doing today is that we are going to look at the relevance of Shakespeare, which is a very intimidating topic, because William Shakespeare in himself commands so much of respect. He's so iconic, he's a canon in himself. So we all know that he is in the field of English literature, in drama, theatre, performance studies department. Shakespeare is not only popular in English literature, but he's a rage in a lot of centers for drama, theatre and performance the world over. We do know that, for those of us who are more, the way I thought I would work this around with all of you would be that I'm not really sure what is your familiarity level with William Shakespeare, but I think we do need to remind ourselves that a bit about his biography. He died in around 60s Elizabethan age, because Queen Elizabeth was the queen, and she was the ruling monarch of England from 1558 to 1603. So often Shakespeare's name is synonymous with the period that he wrote in, with the period that his plays were performed in, and that is the Elizabethan period. So of course, we all know that during the course of his life, he wrote some brilliant poetry, some brilliant plays, and some of you must be very familiar with his sonnets, but even more than his sonnets, he's very famous for these 37 plays that he wrote, or to be more precise, 36 and a half plays that he wrote. And he was a rage during his time, and he's even a rage even more so after his death. So the question is that it's been around 450 years since his life and time. He's been put on a pedestal. He's been idolized. He has complete iconic status, as I said. But the question that comes to our mind today is that, should William Shakespeare's works still be studied in departments and schools the world over? And is he still relevant as a writer, as a playwright? So even before we get on to his relevance, I think it will be nice to address a few questions but why do all of you consider him to be irrelevant? Why does a certain school of thought feel that Shakespeare has become irrelevant? Is he irrelevant because then we should be dismissing a lot of religious texts, we should be dismissing mythology, we should be dismissing everything that was written what, 200 years back, 300 years back, 400 years back? That definitely is not the question, that is somebody irrelevant simply because somebody is dated. Federico Garcia Lorca, you have Anton Chekhov, the Russian playwright, you have Bertolt Brecht, the German playwright, you've got Arnold Wesker, Dario Fo. So the amount of drama that has happened after Shakespeare's death, specifically in the 20th century, one really assume whether Shakespeare is really relevant anymore, and whether we should all be looking at the plays of these other dramatists as well, right? The third and a more crucial concern why Shakespeare is challenged today is that a lot of post-colonial countries have their own theater writers. A lot of post-colonial countries feel that if they have their own indigenous cultures, if they have their own oral traditions, if they have their own folk themes and folk cultures and their own theater, why should they carry on and on studying Western theatrical traditions? I mean, and in that particular list, Shakespeare tops that list, right? So since the 1970s, in a lot of post-colonial countries, India, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, to name a few, departments actually took it on as a challenge to try to put English literature, which was a literature of the colonizer, the white literature, into the periphery and bring their own. They all started laughing and they said, well, he doesn't belong to our time. So it's not simply in in literature departments that the world over that Shakespeare's position has been challenged since the last 3 to 4 decades, but even amongst young children in schools, they say, well, he's not of our time, he doesn't belong to our time. But having said all that, I still believe that Shakespeare is relevant, and I'm going to break this up into two very broad categories. The first one, which I'll address address more quickly, is that what is his relevance today in the academic field, in literature departments, in drama and theater departments. And without mincing my words, Shakespeare is still quite a rage in a lot of English departments all over the world. Students from different cultures regard Shakespeare as someone who's intimidating, but at the same time, someone they look upon with a lot of respect. And I think a lot of undergraduate students, and maybe some of you as well, remain under an anxiety of influence because there is a pressure that we need to study Shakespeare because we are. So whether you are, you could be just a student of management, a student of political science, but if you are a student of literature in any academic department, that anxiety of influence remains, that we need to study Shakespeare because, Shakespeare needs to be studied, right? It's almost that taken for granted attitude as well. In drama and theater departments the world over, Shakespeare needs to be studied simply because of the sheer power of the spectacle of his plays and what can be commanded on stage through a depiction of his plays. Shakespeare's dialogues, his script, the costumes that come in, the stage props are spectacular. Imagine staging a play, say an Antony and Cleopatra, where you have Cleopatra sitting in Alexandria in Egypt, and you have Antony in Rome, and you have the battle, which is reported to you in Alexandria. Imagine that, the spectacular stage set. I mean, any theater department, director, production center would be crazy for this kind of theater. And of course, as a personal rejoinder here, I've been teaching at St. Stephen's College for almost 12, 15 years, and St. Stephen's has a Shakespeare Society, which we started somewhere back in probably 1920s and 1925s. It's almost a 100-year-old society. Every year, diligently, that society stages a play by Shakespeare as its annual production, right? And you can't imagine that we have to stage 4 shows, 5 shows, 6 shows. It runs to full houses. So in theater departments, I feel there is still a lot of relevance for Shakespeare simply because of the power of the spectacle that his plays, bring in whenever you want to stage them. But coming on to more relevant topics, I feel, what is the relevance of Shakespeare in the popular imagination? What is the relevance of Shakespeare in an ordinary man's life, in an ordinary woman's life, in the ordinary imagination? A lot of people say they would never find themselves in the shoes of Shakespeare. You know, they can never feel the way his characters behave. They can never feel the way his characters would talk. But the point is, I love Shakespeare because he is so relatable, and that passion cannot be taken away from me. And the fact is that all his characters are sitting right among you, amidst you right now. Each one of you somewhere is representing an aspect of one of his characters. Characters so true to life. So if I look at the popular imagination and I try to connect his relevance in the world, um, in a more specific way, let's look at film adaptations of Shakespeare's plays in India, in Bollywood. And I think the first name that would come to our mind would be the director Vishal Bhardwaj, who's done 3 brilliant adaptations of Shakespeare's plays, right? You have Maqbool, and I think it had Irfan Khan, who sadly passed just yesterday. And a brilliant story. Maqbool is an adaptation of Macbeth. I assume some of you have watched it. If you haven't, I would really recommend this adaptation of Shakespeare's Macbeth. It's interesting that, Vishal Bhardwaj chose a play written in the Jacobean age somewhere in 1601. And he picked up the plot in total, and he adapted it to a very typical really, clip and prune any character or plot from Shakespeare. He actually picks it up in a very real sense. And he gives you, Shahid Kapoor, who plays, the character of Hamlet. It's a narrative of a young boy. He's a poet at heart. He's caught between, his mother's lust for his uncle and terrorist stricken Kashmir, right? And of course, the story goes on. But you would realize that at the end of all the movies you've watched, even if you've not read a Macbeth or a Hamlet or a Othello, and you watch these movies, you would realize that all these tales somewhere make you connect with them, because each one of us has some aspect of somebody's character in that play in us. It could be jealousy, it could be desire, it could be envy, it could be ambition, it could be impulsiveness, it could be procrastination. Procrastination is, the idea of postponing things all the time, because you remember Hamlet's famous speech, to be or not to be, that is the question. And I think all of us are in a Hamletian dilemma all the time in our lives, especially as we're growing up. And finally, my last analogy for in the popular imagination for Shakespeare would be an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet called Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. Of course, it's a movie when you people were not even born. It came out in the 80s, but it had again a very stellar cast, and it's a story of a pair of star-crossed lovers caught in a family feud, and an account of the rigid, stubborn family. They both die at the end. So you watching these movies, you realize that Shakespeare can be adapted to the Indian context. Shakespeare can be adapted to an African context. He can be adapted to an American context. And how can he be adapted to an American context is something that I'm just going to speak about. You all know that Shakespeare's last play was a play called The Tempest, right? That has a very famous character called Prospero and his daughter Miranda, and this lovely little sprite spirit called Ariel. So The Tempest, if you would know, is a story about Prospero, who's a white man. He colonizes a beautiful tropical island, and when he colonizes that island, he colonizes its inhabitants, the natives, a mother, Sycorax, and her son, Caliban. If you see, Caliban is an anagram for cannibal, right? Which is a very typical racial stereotyping for, the darker skinned people, Caliban and cannibal. So Prospero arrives on the island. He takes away the resources. He enslaves Caliban. He enslaves his mother Sycorax. Some foods get shipwrecked. There are drunken scenes. There are romantic scenes. There's even a song. You have the lovely Ariel who keeps on speaking in Shakespeare's brilliant language. Full fathom 5, their father lies. Those were the pearls that were his eyes. You have brilliant dialogues, brilliant narration. But all these charms do not hide the real story that Prospero has colonized the island in the same way like Europe stole American land and Australian land, the land of America and the land of Australia. So Shakespeare's Tempest would still find relevance in the land of America and the land of Australia, where you have the story of a white man coming to the land and colonizing, and the land taking away its resources. In more ways than one, I think one of the plays which is very close to my heart is a play called The Merchant of Venice. It's also a play that is very close to the popular imagination of a lot of young students, because somewhere students get to study Merchant of Venice because of this very powerful character called Shylock, Shylock the Jew, he's very famously called. And you do know that, it's a very culturally specific play because it talks about Judaism, it talks about the condition of Jews. But we also need to realize that in Shakespeare's time, Jews were a minority in England. They were not treated well because um, in the entire Rome was practically Catholic by the 14th century, and in England, especially in the 16th century, Protestantism had come in, and Jews practically lived in ghettos and were treated very badly as second-rate citizens. Let's look at the 20th century with Hitler's Germany. Let's look at the Nazi genocide. Let's look at the Jewish Holocaust, and let's see if The Merchant of Venice is not relevant in the context of, anti-Semitism or anti-Jew sentiment in the 20th century, which caused a massive diaspora of Jews, and the Jews spread all over the world, especially, and they claimed the land of Israel, displacing Palestine at that time. If you go back to Merchant of Venice and remember Shylock's character, who's the most endearing and somewhere so close to my heart, all the characters in the play, they blame him, they curse him, they spit on him, they call him names simply because he's a Jew. And when Shylock asks, Antonio for a pound of flesh, everybody says how cruel Shylock is, how hateful he is, how Jewish he is. Shylock says, yes, I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passion? Aren't we fed with the same food? Aren't we hurt with the same weapons? If you prick us, will we not bleed? If you tickle us, will we not laugh? If you poison us, will we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? Right? So somewhere, if you look at Shylock's position, look at this brilliant soliloquy that he speaks about, if you poison us, will we not die? Hath not a Jew eyes and hands? Don't you feel Shakespeare's Shylock's speech cries for all people who feel prejudice even today? Religious minorities, caste minorities, India, movement. I mean, the blacks were treated with the same disregard as Shylock is treated in The Merchant of Venice. Look at the condition of, finally, what I want to say is that Shakespeare has created profoundly complex characters, and I think his relevance is timeless because he has the best understanding of the human psyche as compared to all the parameters put together. He's constantly challenging our prejudices, he's constantly challenging our beliefs, and in more ways than one. Just to wind up, I want to say that Shakespeare has connected over generations, and a lot of people keep on saying, oh, he's so universal, he's timeless. I personally feel that that as much as we need to universalize him, I want you to respond to him personally. I want you to respond to him as a woman, as a man. I want you to respond to him as a differently abled person. I want you to respond to him as a Muslim, Christian, Jew, Dalit, Black, tribal, right? The point is, each one of you needs to respond to Shakespeare based on your cultural conditioning, based on your gender, based on your environment. In other words, you need to understand his relevance in the words of Shakespeare as you like it, right? Thank you so much. I can, of course, speak on and
Well, thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Natasha. I know it's not possible to do justice to Shakespeare in just about 25 minutes, but you've done a commendable job, I think. And all our participants have been listening very carefully. I also need to tell you that some of the very senior people in our university are here, or they entered for a short while. And our Vice Chancellor was also here, but I deliberately did not tell you because I did not want to intimidate you. So at one point, we had more than 80 people, which is twice the number that we expected.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's Natasha for you. And Natasha has been telling us a little bit about Shakespeare and why Shakespeare is relevant even today. I'm sure she would welcome questions. And there was already a question that somebody wants to ask. Avni is going to ask you a question. Avni?
Hi, Avni.
Hi, Natasha. I'm so glad I attended the lecture.
Happy to meet you.
Wow, it's so refreshing after some of the very boring webinars which have been going around the world
Yeah.
during COVID-19. So just this is more of an observation. Don't you think somewhere it's so I don't know. I mean, I studied in DU. I did my literature honors from Miranda long time back.
Lovely.
And at that point in time, I don't remember Shakespeare being taught to us in the context of then, right? In the context of today. So now we have so many movies, like you rightly pointed out. So do you think it is somewhere the fault of our teachers, professors, that they're not able to contextualize Shakespeare, sort of relate Shakespeare and his plays with the realities of today and get the students more interested around it? Because you still compare a Shakespeare with possibly reading a Milton, right? It's damn difficult. The language is
Milton,
not
yes.
something which comes naturally to you, and kids really get scared. So that's one. And second is, as readers, have we also forgotten, or have we not been taught the art of contextualizing an old text in today's time and age?
Avni, that was absolutely brilliant, your observation, because, I have been on both sides of the table. I've been taught Shakespeare and I have been taught Shakespeare and I have taught Shakespeare for maybe 12 or 13 years at Eton itself. I think the biggest problem is that as professors, at times we focus too much on the aesthetic content of the play. Right? We'll be unnecessarily praising the dialogues and the poetry and the script and the puns and the metaphors and the symbols. And we, unfortunately, ourselves transform Shakespeare into an archaic text. But the relevance of Shakespeare, and I think it's a lot to do with approaches. How can one not look at Shakespeare through new historicism? If you've been a student of literature at DU, how can you not look at Shakespeare through cultural politics and historical material? And if we do apply that lens to Shakespeare, then we are talking what you and me are talking, right? You will historicize Shakespeare. You will look at the condition of Jews in England, the social political condition of women in Taming of the Shrew. I mean, look at how Taming of the Shrew, a relevant Taming of the Shrew is related to the marriage market in England, right? To the misogyny of women, the commodification of women. So it's a matter of contextualizing, and I think a lot of teachers, especially in India, we professors take it for granted that all our students are from the same culture. And I think somewhere, because everybody looks similar. And that is something I always realize here in Toronto as well, that when I walk into class, you can't assume that everybody from every culture would react to Shakespeare in the same way. So thank you so much. But yes, professors need to, I think, historicize Shakespeare more than emotionalize.
Natasha, I must tell you, Avni is the vice president of our university. And
oh, nice.
We all love her very much, and she's very supportive of our department.
She looks very lovely. Thank you, Avni.
So thank you, Avni. Anybody else who wants to ask a question? Come on. I know it's been booked done, but you can speak up. Who is that? Rani. Yes, Rani is a student of ours. Yes, Rani, please.
Ma'am, yeah.
Come on, speak up, Rani.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am.
Hi, Rani.
Ma'am, my question is that what inspired Shakespeare to write tragedy stories?
Okay, so Rani, the thing is that Shakespeare, that's actually a question that a lot of critics have also not who've not been able to answer, from the perspective that, every writer has a bent of mind. So Bernard Shaw wrote comedies, Ibsen wrote tragedies, Lorca, the Spanish writer, wrote tragedies, right? Chekhov wrote typical bourgeois plays and tragedies. Shakespeare wrote the best of tragedies, the best of comedies, the best of history plays, the best of Roman plays, and the best of tragicomedies. So what inspired Shakespeare to write his tragedies, to my mind and my position on it, is the very unstable political, cultural background of England at that time, right? All Shakespeare's tragedies are political. Even if you want to call Macbeth, even Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy, but somewhere it brings in the politics of an aristocratic culture with two aristocratic families warring with each other, creating, a sense of absolute desolation for those young lovers. So to my mind, it's the politics of the age that inspired Shakespeare to write tragedies, along with the recognition that man is, after all, a foolish, ignorant, silly boy who will always have illusions to power, right? You have a corrupted psyche and you have corrupt politics and you have Shakespeare's tragedy. That equals to Shakespeare's tragedy. So somewhere I feel it's the corrupt psyche of man and the corrupt psyche of Elizabethan England at the time, where there were assassination plots against Elizabeth because Elizabeth had no heir. So, you had the gunpowder plot and the Catholic plot and the popish plot. And so Shakespeare wrote Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth, and Othello against the backdrop between 1598 and 1603, 1604, Shakespeare wrote his tragedies. So politics of the age inspired him and the corrupt psyche of man. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay,
Done.
4 minutes more. Any other question coming up?
Thank you, ma'am.
So I have a question over here. My name is Atul.
Hi, Atul.
I am not an English major, so excuse me. And
Oh, but
I've actually never read Shakespeare.
He's into
I've
everything.
seen a few of his
He's a
adopted
Vice
plays,
Chancellor
and
of University.
Wonderful. Very happy to meet you.
well, not reading Shakespeare doesn't give me too much of accolade. Anyway, what inspires you to specialize in Shakespeare, or what inspired you to start studying Shakespeare?
I remember, I've of course grown up in India, so in a very typical CBSE format, all I had was Julius Caesar in grade 9, I remember. And I did a bit of Julius Caesar in grade 9. I think as an undergraduate student at St. Stephen's College, I did my English majors from there. I think, Atul, it was primarily the way my professors taught me the play. I was enthralled. I thought nothing better can happen to me in life than Shakespeare. So I think for me, that input, and I did Macbeth as a sophomore. Yes, I think I was a second year student when I did Shakespeare's Macbeth. And I think I've not looked back. I mean, quoting him, and I've taught Shakespeare at St. Stephen's College for 12 years, the early modern drama paper. And I've maybe published an article or two on him. So for me, he always remained a favorite because I feel a lot of language that we use, we constantly refer to Shakespeare's quotations and Shakespeare's lines. So yes.
So where do I start? Any tips for me? Where do I start?
I think it will be lovely if you could start, in today's day and age, I would really recommend that you start with maybe, Shakespeare's Tempest. You would probably really relate to it because it's so much about...
12th night, I would say 12th night.
Or 12th, yes, I was about to come to that. 12th night and As You Like It. Yes, you could go to 12th night.
There's a quick question from Pradeep. He says, is there any Indian playwright whose style comes near Shakespeare's?
I think where it comes to an Indian playwright, I think that is a very tough question to answer because our Indian playwrights are primarily in two categories. One would be the theatre of roots. You have Girish Karnad and you have a lot of regional...
Dattani, we have Dattani.
You have Mahesh Dattani. But on the other hand, you have very political writers and street play specialists like Safdar Hashmi. You have Habib Tanveer, Mahashweta Devi, Vijay Tendulkar. I really don't think somebody can come as close to Shakespeare where it comes to the delineation of his characters and the complexity of his plot. So I would really...
Once T.S. Eliot said that the world can be divided between Shakespeare and Dante. There is no third.
There is no third. I agree.
And we have to wind up now. We've got just 2 minutes left and I have to spend these 2 minutes telling you about Natasha. Natasha.
But before you say anything about Natasha, there will be some people in India who will say there's someone called Chetan Bhagat. With that pun, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, sure. Right.
No, and before we abruptly end, Manju, I think we need another session. So please request Natasha from all of us that we should have a part 2 for this because I think we're not done.
Well, Natasha is Ghar Ki Murgi. We can call her anytime. And
absolutely,
I'm very proud to have Natasha, to say that Natasha has been my student, but I had nothing to do with, with what she's become today, with the scholar she's become now, and she's doing very well. But then our kids, our younger generation is supposed to do better than us. There's a line from Keats. They say just as night is followed by day, just as in the beginning there was darkness and chaos, and then the world was created, and then light was created, so on our heels a fresh perfection treads. Our children have to be better. Our new generations have to be better than us. Natasha, I am very proud of you, and please carry on the way you're going. And I'm sure our university would love to have you again to chat with our students. And whenever you come to India, well, there's no way you're going to come here and not meet us.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your patience, all of you. And thank you so much. And I wish I could have spoken more, but maybe another time. Lovely to meet you all.
Right. So from all of us, a very, very big thank you, Natasha. And well, we hope to meet again sometime.
Hope to meet you all soon. And nice to see you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much,
And
Natasha.
let's give her a hand. Let's give her a hand, everyone. We can all give her a thumbs up. I'm going to end the meeting.
Thank you so much for organizing this, Manju. Thank you so much.
Faculty, Atul, Avni, and all my colleagues. And thanks, Natasha. You deserve one big hug.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.